Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving into a fascinating area of ABA, one that can be a real game changer in lots of different settings.
Oh,
We
definitely.
were talking about organizational performance management systems.
That's right.
Ever wondered how to make positive behavior changes stick not just for one person, but for a whole team, department, or even a whole company?
Yeah.
That's exactly what OPM is all about.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it, how we can use these principles of ABA to make that happen, right? To achieve a large-scale change, and boost performance across entire organizations.
Right. Like imagine being tasked with improving safety in, say, a busy factory,
Oh, yeah.
or getting a whole hospital staff on board with a new procedure. Kind of daunting, right?
It can be, absolutely. It can be tough to know where to even start sometimes.
Thankfully, the source material we've got for this deep dive, Chapter 24 of Behavior Analysis for Lasting Change, it really breaks down OPM in a way that's both practical and insightful.
It does.
So let's unpack this a little bit. First things first, the chapter really emphasizes that function matters most,
Right.
right? It's not just about changing behaviors randomly. It's about understanding the why behind those behaviors.
Yeah, like you wouldn't just, start putting up walls without a blueprint if you were building a house, right?
Right.
You gotta have a plan. Understanding the function of the organization, like what is it actually supposed to do? What are the goals? That's the blueprint. Then once we get that, we can figure out which behaviors are actually needed to get there.
Yeah, it's about seeing the big picture,
Yeah.
not just focusing on these isolated behaviors.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how that simple shift in perspective can make such a huge difference. When we start seeing each individual's actions in the context of the organization's overall function, you really start to see how everyone plays a crucial role, even if their contributions might seem, kind of small on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've kind of laid the foundation here a little bit. So now let's talk about the how, I guess. The source introduces this concept of a behavioral package.
Right.
It's kind of intriguing.
Yeah.
And it's presented as this toolkit for change. So what are some of the tools in this kit?
Well, think of it like this. The behavioral package is it's really a systematic approach to changing behavior, right?
Okay.
In organizations. And it involves 7 key components, all playing a critical role. And the first of these is actually goals.
Okay.
Which might seem, pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised how often organizations try to implement change without clear measurable goals in place.
You need to know where you're going before you can get there, right?
Exactly. You need a destination. And then next we have the behavioral program itself.
Right.
And this is where we get down to brass tacks. We define the specific actions or behaviors that need to change in order to achieve those goals we were just talking about. So for example, if the goal is to improve customer service, the behavioral program might be, let's train employees on active listening skills or, how to handle complaints effectively.
So it's about getting really specific and breaking down those big goals into those concrete actions that you can actually see. Right?
Exactly. Yep. And then you've got stimulus control. Think of this as setting up the environment, right?
Yeah.
So that the desired behaviors are, more likely to actually happen. In a workplace setting, this could be things like clear signage, right? Reminding employees about safety procedures, or even strategically placing tools and materials so things run more efficiently.
So you're setting the stage, kind of nudging people in the right direction.
Yeah. You got it. And then next up, we have what are called antecedent strategies. These are things that we actually put in place before the behavior even occurs to make it easier for people to do the right thing. Think training programs, clear instructions, providing people with the resources they need. You're removing barriers,
Right. It's it's like giving them the tools and support they need to actually succeed.
Exactly. Then we have feedback. This one is absolutely vital, letting people know how they're doing, recognizing their accomplishments, and then, offering guidance for improvement. So think about things like performance reviews, maybe those one-on-one meetings, even just, casual praise and recognition all throughout the workday.
So yeah, it sounds like feedback is really all about communication.
Yeah.
Keeping everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
And reinforcing those positive changes that we're trying to make.
You got it. Then we have consequences. What happens after the behavior, right? Do the actions lead to positive or negative outcomes? Because, consequences shape future behavior. Positive consequences increase the likelihood of a behavior happening again, and negative consequences, of course, have the opposite effect.
So things like promotions, right?
Yeah.
Or bonuses,
Oh, yeah.
even verbal praise
Right.
that could all be positive consequences for desired behaviors.
Absolutely.
Whereas, warnings, demotions, even disciplinary actions, those might be the negative consequences for those undesirable behaviors.
You got it. You got it. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we have sustaining program implementation.
Okay.
So this is all about making sure those changes we've worked so hard to create, don't just kind of fizzle out after a while, that they become part of the culture.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, so many initiatives start with a bang and then,
Right.
lose momentum.
Yeah.
What's the secret to making these changes stick?
Well, there are some powerful strategies that we'll dive into a little bit later in this deep dive, but it essentially involves things like gradually fading those artificial prompts that we talked about earlier, helping people recognize the natural rewards of doing things well, and then making sure that those new skills are actually transferable to different situations.
I can't wait to explore those.
Yeah.
But before we move on to that, I'm curious about, well, we've talked a lot about the what of OPM.
Yeah.
But what about the who? I mean, these changes don't just happen in a vacuum, right? There are people involved making decisions, implementing these systems. And I'm thinking specifically about those folks who are on the ground, really driving these changes forward.
Right. You're absolutely right. I mean, we can have the best, most perfectly crafted behavioral package in the world, but if we don't have the right people to implement it effectively and then support, everyone else who's being asked to change, it won't amount to much. And that's where we shift the focus from the what to the who of OPM, the change agents.
The change agents. Love that. So let's talk about those change agents. What are some of the unique challenges that ABA professionals might encounter when they're working with these change agents?
Well, one of the big ones is preventing burnout and frustration. Implementing new systems can be incredibly demanding, especially in these large organizations. It's easy to get overwhelmed, feel discouraged, especially if progress is slow or people are resisting the changes.
Yeah, I can see that being a real hurdle. It's not enough to just design a great system. You really have to make sure that the people implementing it actually have the support and resources they need to succeed.
For sure. And another big challenge is making sure that those changes that are implemented actually last over time. We call that program maintenance. And it's essential for making sure those positive changes really stick.
So it's about making those new behaviors the norm rather than the exception, right?
Exactly. And to do that, we need to equip those change agents with the right tools and strategies.
I am all ears. Let's dive into those practical strategies for supporting change agents and making sure those new behaviors stick around.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
So we're talking about supporting those change agents, the folks who are really making these OPM systems come to life. So what are some specific strategies that ABA professionals can use to help them thrive and really make those new behaviors stick?
Well, one strategy that might seem surprisingly simple but incredibly powerful is just being present and supportive, just being there, observing, maybe offering encouragement, and just, being a guide can make a world of difference for someone who is really trying to implement a new program. It can feel very overwhelming.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, sometimes all you need is a hand to hold and an ear to listen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's so true.
Yeah.
And there's a great story in the book about this, actually. It's about this teacher who's, struggling to learn a new iPad program for her classroom.
Oh, yeah.
And she's feeling really overwhelmed. And the observer, the ABA professional in this case, just sits down next to her and patiently walks her through the steps.
Oh, wow.
Offering praise and encouragement along the way.
So the observer isn't even directly intervening with the students or trying to fix the problem, just being there to support the teacher.
Exactly. Just offering that, moral support and guidance. And it made all the difference. The teacher was able to get her confidence back and successfully implement the program, all because someone was there to offer a little support and encouragement.
It's amazing how sometimes those smallest interventions can be the most powerful.
It really is.
Okay, so what's another strategy that we can use to support those change agents?
Using prompts temporarily. Remember how we talked about stimulus control?
Yeah.
Well, prompts are a type of antecedent strategy, and it's where we use cues or reminders to help people learn and perform new behaviors.
Okay, so can you give us like an example of how those prompts might be used in like a workplace setting?
Sure. So let's say you're trying to create a more collaborative work environment,
Okay.
one where people, regularly give each other positive feedback.
Yeah.
You could use verbal prompts. So maybe have the team leader remind everyone to acknowledge each other's contributions during a meeting.
Okay.
Or you could even use visual prompts like posting signs with encouraging messages or setting up a system where people can give each other, I don't know, like virtual high fives or kudos points, something like that.
So you're essentially giving them those little nudges to help them adopt those new behaviors.
Yeah.
And the key here is that we're using these prompts temporarily, right?
Exactly.
You don't want them to become like reliant on them forever.
Right. You want people to like internalize those behaviors.
Okay.
It's like training wheels on a bike. Eventually you want to take those training wheels off.
Right.
And let the rider, balance and ride on their own.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so what's next on our list of strategies for supporting change agents?
Providing effective feedback. It's crucial. And there's a real art to it, It's not just about pointing out mistakes or just praising good work. It's about how you deliver that feedback in a way that's constructive, motivating, and leads to that lasting change that we're after.
So there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. What are like some key things to keep in mind when you're giving feedback?
Well, one important principle is to focus on specific, like observable behaviors rather than just making, those general statements.
Oh, okay.
So instead of just saying, great job, you could say, I really appreciate how you took the initiative to help your teammate with that project. That showed, real teamwork.
Yeah. So be really specific, descriptive.
Yeah.
So they really understand, what they did well and why it mattered.
Exactly. And another key is to be timely. The sooner you can give that feedback, the better, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it should be balanced. Include, positive reinforcement for what's going well, but also, constructive criticism for those areas that could, use a little bit of work.
It's all about helping them grow, right? Not just pointing out like where they messed up.
Absolutely. And another interesting point the book brings up is the importance of actually setting goals jointly with those change agents instead of, just saying, here are your goals, go do them.
Yeah.
Involve them in the process.
I can see how that would be really empowering.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you're working in an organization where, goals are typically just handed down from upper management?
Yeah.
How do you advocate for a more collaborative approach?
That's a great question, and I think it really highlights the importance of communication and building those strong relationships. It might take time, to persuade leadership about, the benefits of involving employees in that goal-setting process.
Okay.
But ultimately, when they're more involved, you get more buy-in, more motivation, that feeling of like ownership.
So it's kind of about like being a champion for that?
Yes.
And shifting the culture to be a little bit more collaborative?
Exactly. And lastly, we can't forget about identifying and utilizing those different sources of reinforcement to keep those change agents motivated.
This is where things get fun, right? Like rewards and incentives and all that good stuff.
It can be, but it's also about being strategic. Reinforcement doesn't always have to involve those like big bonuses or those elaborate rewards. Sometimes the simplest ones are the most effective, like a sincere thank you, just acknowledging publicly maybe a job well done, or even, I don't know, a genuine smile, just that expression of appreciation.
So it's about being mindful of what motivates each individual.
Yeah.
And then tailoring those reinforcers to their specific preferences.
You got it. Some people love public recognition, right? Others prefer a quiet word of praise. Some are motivated by, tangible rewards. While others find greater satisfaction in just like that sense of accomplishment or contributing to a team effort. The key is to understand what makes each person tick and use that variety, to keep them engaged.
This has been so helpful. We've really covered a lot when it comes to supporting change agents.
We have.
But, there's one big question looming. How do we ensure that these positive changes that we've worked so hard to create actually stick around for the long haul?
That's where program maintenance comes in, and that's what we'll tackle next.
So we've talked about the what of OPM and the who, But now let's get to the how do we make it last part. That's where program maintenance comes in, right?
You got it. Program maintenance. It's all about making those positive changes we've worked so hard for actually stick around, you know? It's about making them part of the organization's DNA, so to speak.
So they're not just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, exactly. We want to see those new behaviors become like the new normal, you know?
Right.
Standard way of doing things.
Okay, so it's like teaching someone to ride a bike, right? You start with training wheels, but eventually those training wheels have got to come off.
Oh, I love that analogy.
So that the rider can, really experience that freedom and independence of riding on their own.
That's a great way to put it. And it's similar with program maintenance. We need to gradually decrease those prompts and supports we put in place initially, to help those change agents become more and more self-sufficient.
Right. So it's about finding that sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Like fading those supports slowly enough that people don't feel lost or overwhelmed.
Right.
But quickly enough that they don't become, overly reliant on those artificial cues.
That is the art of program maintenance. And one way to do this is by gradually, thinning the schedule of reinforcement.
Okay.
So remember we talked about using a variety of reinforcers
to
keep those change agents motivated. Well, at first we might reinforce those desired behaviors, pretty frequently, every time they happen.
Right. Like giving a child a sticker every time they complete a task, like when they're first learning a new skill.
Exactly. But as those behaviors start to become more consistent, more natural, we can start spacing out the reinforcers a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe give praise every other time someone does something right, or, offer a bonus after a certain number of goals are met.
So it's kind of like weaning someone off that constant stream of praise or those external rewards, helping them to start to rely more on, the natural satisfaction that comes from doing a job well.
That's a great way to think about it. And this leads us to another crucial element of program maintenance, identifying and then, utilizing those natural reinforcers that are already built into the work environment.
Okay, so we're talking about those inherent rewards that people get from doing a good job, right? Like a sense of accomplishment, recognition from their peers, getting positive feedback from clients, things like that.
Exactly. These are the kinds of reinforcers that are already there, woven into the fabric of the workplace. We just have to be more intentional about actually recognizing them and then making sure we leverage that power,
No, it makes sense. I mean, if people are finding their work inherently rewarding, they're much less likely to revert back to those old habits, even when those external rewards start to fade away.
That's the beauty of natural reinforcement. And last but not least, we got to think about promoting generalization.
Okay.
So making sure that those new skills and behaviors aren't just limited to, one specific context or situation.
Right. So helping people apply what they've learned in different settings with different people.
Exactly. So for example, let's say a company rolls out a new communication protocol, in their customer service department.
Oh.
Well, we wouldn't want those those skills to just be limited to interactions with customers, right?
Right. Ideally, you'd want those skills to be used in, team meetings and their interactions with management.
Yes.
Even to their personal communication, like outside of work.
Exactly. The more we can promote that kind of generalization, the more powerful and lasting those changes are going to be.
This has been an awesome deep dive into OPM.
I agree.
I mean, we covered so much, from understanding the why behind those behaviors to actually creating effective behavioral packages, to supporting those amazing change agents, the folks on the ground making it all happen.
We're the real heroes.
But before we go, I want to bring it back to you, our listener. How can you apply these OPM principles in your own work, in your community, even your personal life? Maybe you're working with a team that's struggling to reach its goals, or maybe you're trying to build a new habit, Whatever the challenge is, remember that understanding behavior is the key. It's the key to creating real, lasting, positive change at any level.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating world of organizational performance management systems. Until next time.